Hello and welcome to another episode of An Old Man Watches, and today I'm going to be talking about the fourth and to date final film in The Crow franchise, the 2005 film The Crow, Wicked Prayer. And our protagonist in this film is Jimmy. Jimmy is a young man who frankly seems to be a bit of a no-hoper. But he somehow managed to win the heart of Lily, the beautiful daughter of the local minister. Now, Lily's dad is definitely not on board with this relationship, and so the two young lovers plan to run away together and start a new life. Alas, for Jimmy and for Lily, their hopes for future happiness are about to be dashed because they're going to have a visit from Luke, an old friend turned satanic cultist. Yeah, it's a fairly common problem that we've all experienced, right? Anyway, Luke murders Jimmy and Lily as part of his plan to become Satan incarnate. But now dead, Jimmy's spirit is visited by the Crow, a supernatural force of revenge from beyond the grave. The Crow resurrects Jimmy as an undead revenant, giving him a chance to even the scores with Luke. Jimmy goes about this by donning some rather goofy-looking gothic makeup, and then he begins to hunt Luke and Luke's gang of thugs, picking them off one by one. However, he takes too long in doing this, and Luke has time to take on the power of Satan, or at least some kind of supernatural force willing to claim that name. Will even the unstoppable power of the Crow be enough to overcome Luke's unholy might? That's, the culmination of the movie, so I'm not going to tell you the answer, but you can probably guess. So I have friends who are big fans of the first Crow film. I was never that impressed with it, but I can see what appealed to them and why it was a box office success. Director Alex Proyas has a really good eye for striking visuals, and lead actor Brandon Lee, son of martial arts legend Bruce Lee, had plenty of charisma. Alas, Brandon Lee was killed in an on-set accident during the making of the first Crow film, in what was another tragic loss for the Lee family after his father's own sudden and early demise. Now, all that said, I definitely do not have any friends who are big fans of this film. So let's talk about the many ways in which it fails to measure up. So you may be familiar with the phrase strike while the iron is hot. And the studio did attempt to do this with The Crow. After the first film came out in 1994, it was only 2 years later that The Crow, City of Angels appeared in cinemas. That film was not well received. One reviewer simply said it was stunningly awful. And more importantly, from a studio perspective, it didn't fare well at the box office. This led to a longer gap, 4 years, before Kirsten Dunst somehow ended up slumming in the straight-to-video The Crow Salvation, about which the best that anyone seemed to be able to say was that it was less egregiously terrible than the previous effort. All that meant that by the time this movie was in production, it had basically been a decade since anyone was excited about a new Crow movie. The iron was well and truly cold. And in those circumstances, you've got a couple of strategies you can go for. You could take a Hail Mary big risk approach and go for a home run of a movie. Big budget, charismatic star, bold new hook, chance to relaunch the franchise anew. And actually build the franchise that it seemed like you might have stumbled into. Or you could play the cinematic equivalent of small ball. You could bunt and hope you make it to first base. Recoup your money, basically. And the people behind Wicked Prayer definitely went with the latter option. This shows through in every aspect of the film's production, and in no place more obviously than with the cast, which is all about maximum name recognition for minimum expenditure. The names you can see on your screen were, at least in 2005, recognisable enough for people to know of them, but they were not people that you would expect to see attached to a headline cinema project of the time. Jimmy is played by Edward Furlong, whose acting career was launched in 1991's Terminator 2, and was reasonably successful through the 90s, but then took a massive nosedive around the turn of the millennium, in parallel with Furlong's own personal struggle with substance abuse. The Crow, Wicked Prayer would be one step of a decline that, toward appearing in schlock like 2012 sci-fi original Arachnoquake. Antagonist Luke, meanwhile, is played by David Boreanaz, who had just finished a 7-year stint of playing Angel, the vampire with a soul, first on the TV series Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then on Angel's own self-titled series. Now, Boreanaz is a solid hand, as his multiple successful long-running TV roles show, but playing someone like Luke needs another gear than what he actually delivers. Whether that comes down to him not finding that gear or the director not asking for that gear, doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, he doesn't turn in the kind of performance that Luke really needs in order to be memorable. And then finally we have Tara Reid, who plays Luke's girlfriend Lola. Reid enjoyed a brief burst of success in comedy films between 1999 and 2001, before becoming better known for a string of commercial flops and for her hard partying, the latter of which the paparazzi were more than happy to exploit to publicly humiliate her. Like Furlong, she would go on to appear in Sci-Fi Originals, though she had a bit better fortune with them than he did. One of her projects was Sharknado, which somehow became sort of a mini cultural sensation and ultimately spawned 5 sequels. So, I mean, at least she got ongoing work out of it. Not necessarily well-paying ongoing work, but work. But perhaps the saddest thing about Wicked Prayer is that it does finally try to vary up the basic premise of the franchise. I mean, yeah, it follows the whole a guy gets killed, then comes back as an undead revenge killer and slaughters those who wronged him formula that all of the previous films have had, but it introduces the idea of other supernatural forces that might actually be able to counter the powers of the Crow. While that's probably not the most innovative of narrative developments to go with, or if there's one supernatural force, why can't there be more? I mean, it is at least a better idea than the previous films, which was the Crow, but he's still in high school. Because, high school revenge killer movies, what could possibly go wrong? Unfortunately, for this movie, if you're going to have the climax of your film be 2 supernatural powerhouses throwing down, then you need something to make that scene work. You need either 2 highly charismatic performers willing to deliver scenery-chewing bombast, or you need sort of great fight choreography and special effects to carry the film that way. Preferably, you have sort of all of those things in some manner or another. This movie, with its very modest budget and scale, simply can't deliver either. The climactic battle is thoroughly humdrum and falls far short of the climactic crescendo that it really needed to be. But then Wicked Prayer falls short on pretty much every level. So that is Wicked Prayer and why you shouldn't bother to see it. Next time, 1982 Taiwanese thriller, which appears to have been granted quite a number of different titles. The one I saw it under is Breakout from Oppression, which also happens to be one of the titles of a 1978 Hong Kong film with a very different plot. I'm not convinced the risk of confusion of the titles there is an accident. But that's next time. Until then, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.